Okay, I think we'll kick off. Next person we have up is a gentleman by the name of Rob Young. Has his fingers in a lot of pies. Today he'll be talking about Ravenco. And among other things, Rob's been described as an innovator and design thinker. And that links to the presentation he's going to do today. It's a little bit different from the other presentations in that it's not a pivot story as such, but more a how-to. He's going to talk about a virtual innovation workshop tool that could be very useful in that space about innovation and design thinking. So, Rob, if I could hand over to you and give you the floor.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. And apologies up front in the spirit of virtual workshops and Zoom calls. I've got a dog and he doesn't like umbrellas. So if he happens to bark when someone walks past the front of the house, apologies. So yes, hi. I can share out some slides in a second. Slightly different as Andrew said today, less of a pivot story and more of a who should innovate, how to do that remotely, given such drastic changes and everybody being forced to work from home, etc. So I'll jump straight in and throw up some slides, assuming that's going to work. Share screen. Desktop 2. Share. Okay. Please tell me you're seeing some presentation in a second. Where is my presentation? It's not a good start, is it? Sorry about that. I'll do a worst case. There you go. I was just about to introduce myself and say I've got 20 plus years running remote workshops. And it's not going to share my presentation. I need it to do the whole desktop, that's all. Let's try again. Because I'm going to flip between. Yep. Are you seeing that? Okay, so worst case is it won't like presentation mode. There you go. Are we good?
Yep, that's coming.
Fantastic. Sorry about that. So yes, my name's Rob. I've got 25 years experience delivering, designing and leading services remotely. Basically, my entire career has started with CSIRO. I'm still employed full-time with CSIRO, and I have 2 other registered businesses there that I'm involved with as well. My entire career with CSIRO, that being a national research organisation, has involved interstate counterparts, distributed teams, and distributed service delivery. So my background's been in the IT space and has worked through delivering on-site IT support in the very early days through to running those IT support teams across 3 states, and then various other guises and roles, ran their IT service desk nationally, was involved with redesigning how those services were delivered, merging teams, a whole bunch of service design, delivery, customer service based iterations and adaptations all the way through. Several years ago, sort of started looking a little bit outside the government bubble and started going to some networking events and whatnot, and really enjoyed it. Circling with some small business owners and thought, a lot of what I actually know from the large organisation and enterprise space is totally applicable to these smaller businesses, but they either can't afford it or they don't know about things. So I was really quite passionate about stepping into that space, and I've always been quite entrepreneurial myself, and intrapreneurial, obviously, within CSIRO. So kicked off a few different ventures in that sort of space, but today really that key is virtual innovation workshops. Who should be innovating? How do you innovate remotely? Because it is a different skill and a whole different set of tools, and a different set of challenges. So on the right hand side there, I'll touch briefly on the who, the why, and a little bit on the how, and I'll include, as Andrew said, a little brief demo of a specific online design thinking tool, which just takes online workshopping up a notch to the next level and makes things a lot easier and a lot more productive and valuable for the participants. So I'll briefly flick through a few slides before I get to the demo. So in the customer experience space and innovation space, I'm hugely passionate about journeys. Journeys are everywhere and everyone's on one. The more you understand the journey, the better placed you are to address it and make a change somewhere in that journey that's going to add real value to someone. There's three key journeys that I tend to focus on. One is the business journey that business owner is on and that the business is on. So what direction is that business going? What are their motivations? What changes have they made? What changes might they make in the future? Are they looking to grow? Are they happy with where they are? Your business is on a journey. And as a business owner, with your experience level, your personal circumstances, your financial circumstances, all come into play to your business bubble. Your customers obviously are all on their own journeys. And they've got all of their influences and their motivations and their needs and pain points. They're interacting with different people at different times. There's different pressures and they're going through their world. And it's completely separate to your world as the business owner. Completely different paths. And all around that, affecting both of those really are trends, and especially technology comes into play a lot with service delivery design and innovations nowadays. So there's things in the world that happen that affect the customer's journey and the business's journey. COVID is a perfect example of that on a major global trend. Something happened that affects everyone. Everyone starts moving online. These regulations and restrictions are being applied to everybody. If it's impacting customers, it's impacting your business. So the key goal here with this diagram is when you can acknowledge those three separate journeys and try and align them, that's when you make breakthroughs, and that's when you're actually going to, as I put up there, arrive at a destination together. So that's just a nice little sort of foundation to put in the back of your head whenever you're looking at anything. And there were some great examples earlier on, especially from Bree and Michelle, around looking at what the customers are doing. I know Michelle mentioned earlier on what might inspire my customers. They're all locked away at home. They're working from home. They've got all these new pressures. Everything's changed for them. What can I do that will inspire them? And that led down this path to a change in her business. And she brought those two things together, and that's where she's managed to get success. So she's aligned those journeys together. Next slide, COVID. Touched on it just then. So COVID has hugely impacted the customer journey. Mammoth changes in customer behavior, and that's going to flow through to what you're delivering in your business. Massive changes to customer needs, priorities, and emotions. People are scared of things. People are panic buying. From a business perspective, that behavioral change and emotional change has turned into a trend, which has essentially went global in a matter of days, that completely devastated or built entire businesses. The toilet roll companies were like, oh my God, how are we going to keep up with this? For instance, as a perfect example. So little things can very quickly snowball in any one of those journeys and have a very significant impact. Zoom calls. We're doing this entire small business festival online now. It's a massive change compared to previous years. Interestingly, on the customer behavior side and on the rapid adoption of technology there, we're all pretty comfortable. Well, we're a couple of months in. I've been doing this for 20 years. Video calls, every phone call's a video call. Most of you guys maybe had tinkered with video calls before, but up until 6 months ago, this was a relatively new way to operate. And look how quickly that's happened. And Bree mentioned in the last session, she's hoping it stays. and a lot of people are hoping it stays. So what impact does that have on your business? So just great examples of why small businesses need to be paying attention to these journeys, need to be paying attention to what is happening in those three core fields, and how their business can then adjust and try and align those three journeys together. So when it comes to actually innovating, you've identified something, got some feedback, you identified a pain point, you've identified a change in one of those journeys that you want to investigate how you might address. What did we used to do? We used to do physical workshops, brainstorming sessions. We might tinker and prototype something, have a bit of a play, talk to some people. Obviously today's session, I'm going to focus on the workshop side. Historically, those were in person, at a single location. And they were usually full day sessions. Even, I've come from government, but even on the smaller business side, getting a few of the team into the boardroom for the lockdown for the day, no distractions, let's work through this thing, let's build our strategy, whatever it is that they're working through. There's some significant benefits to that. Initial excitement, collaborative action, hey, we're doing something, this is the cool, interesting bit, this is setting the path and the direction, this is going to come up with something new, everyone's pretty G'd up. It's pretty visual and pretty fast. You go from an empty wall in the morning to a wall full of post-it notes in the afternoon. But they've always had some cons as well. So there's downtime from the business. You've wiped out an entire day, quite often several consecutive days away from the business. For small business especially, that's really hard. Big business can just build a project team and pull people off and say, right, that's your focus, you're working on this project. They've got the resources and the staff numbers to do that. The smaller businesses may not have that. That's a big impact on their day-to-day and potentially on their bottom line. There's potentially some costs. You may not have a venue to host it. Physical, analog, post-it notes. What do you do with that? That's all you've got is scribbles on post-it notes. You might have a whole host of data. You might have databases. You might have photos and videos. That's really hard to incorporate effectively in an in-person post-it note workshop. And at the end of the day, I'm sure everybody here's done it. They've all had to go and take photos of post-it notes. And then what do you do with it after that? You've captured the day, but where did it go? So virtual workshops have always had some appeal, and I think they've been tried quite a bit over the years. The pros, obviously, some of them counter the negatives on the other side. You can include anyone from anywhere. They could be working from home, and it could be at any time, as Bree mentioned, in the evenings for those board meetings. Same thing applies. You can run an innovation session after hours if you had to. If your team's spread, even just across town, let alone across the country or the world, they could all be included all of a sudden, and everybody gets a voice. There's no travel costs. There's no accommodation costs. All the other benefits up there. The problem that's held them back previously is culture and acceptance. It's always been, let's try this new thing without a real need for it, potentially. A bit of resistance to change. There'd be one or two people remote, which is why you may have tried to do a virtual one and it didn't really work. It's a bit clunky. They miss out on stuff. There's discussions happening in the room, the microphone's not picking up, etc. And the tools historically have been a bit clunky. What's interesting with COVID is those three things have significantly changed as well. The culture and acceptance is gone. This is a new norm. Done. That issue has disappeared. Mixed attendance model. Well, at the moment, most of us don't have the option of a mixed attendance model. And so that's gone. Everyone's remote. And even if three people could be local, it's probably just as easy for them to go to their desk and be remote from their desk, and just have it back down to a single mode of attendance. And the clunky tools and technology, that's changing rapidly as well. Big updates to the infrastructure, Zoom capabilities, etc. So huge shift, especially recently. So if you're going to run a virtual workshop, what's that going to look like? You're going to need video conferencing. You're going to need some collaboration tools. It's really important to engage and continue discussions rather than just the presenter, or handing around to individuals to try and speak can get clunky as well. So having online discussion threads, instant chat, storage and documentation all sorted helps a lot. Online whiteboarding. It's great for general brainstorming. There's plenty of tools around. Zoom's got a very basic one built in. It's not fantastic, but it will let you do a quick scribble to highlight what you want to show. The issue when you're trying to run a full innovation workshop, though, is they really fall over. They're a bit clunky. They can get a bit messy. Miro board, for instance, is fantastic, and I use it all the time to name drop one product. It's brilliant, but to run a 5-day design sprint, so to speak, across it with multiple stages or a full innovation workshop, it gets really confusing and messy. Which leads into other specialized tools. So the one I'm going to show you today is a tailor-made online design sprint tool, designed for this exact purpose. And it's designed to also help step novices through the process as well. So it clearly acknowledges that not everyone in a business or in a design team is going to understand the design thinking process. And so there's features built in to assist with that as well. So very briefly, I'm not sure how I'm going for time. Design thinking, I won't harp onto this too much. There's lots on the internet around design thinking and design sprint, so I highly suggest you go and have a look. It's a design sprint is my innovation tool of choice most of the time, and it works really well, especially for novices. There's a little bit of mindset shift that you have to get into, so it definitely helps having a facilitator of some kind for the first few. Not everyone can be a designer. It's a skill in itself. But the way it's broken down into a very structured process is highly valuable, and it really reminds you, instead of jumping to a solution mode, instead of jumping to an idea that you might have, it really helps force you to just go back and really understand the people and the customer, especially involved. And I'll step through that very briefly as well. Design thinking is used by companies all over the world. The most innovative companies, I know those are a lot of big companies and we're in a small business field, but the same thing applies. There's a huge stat there. It's come from DMI on how design thinking can help set you apart from your competition. There's a few examples of some of the tools that it uses down the bottom. So, introducing SprintBase. SprintBase is the name of the tool that I'm going to showcase very briefly for you today. The key benefits are there on screen. So for teams, it's intuitive, it's interactive, there's preset templates, and everyone can jump in remotely together and collaborate. There's inbuilt guidance for reference for people to go to at each stage. And it follows that design sprint workflow to step you through each stage and keep you focused and not confuse the team, and ensure that you're ticking off the very critical and proven steps to the process. For project leads and facilitators, there's several nice little features in there to involve stakeholders and external observers and even your customers in this process. That has huge benefit of buy-in to the solutions that you're creating, and huge benefit to input to make sure that you're on track and delivering solutions that meet the needs of your customers. And yeah, customizable guidance. So I can put, you can put your own content in if you want. So you've got your own processes, your own tool sets, your own guidance documentation. You can include all of that for your design sprint as well. So live demo. Let me see if I can flick across
Rob,
to
just so you know, you've got 9 more minutes, but and we
9 minutes. God, I should have jumped
is that
straight into
enough?
this instead of the slides.
Enough time? That'll give us some time for some Q&A after that, if that's okay.
Yeah, too easy. Okay, lightning whistle stop, and I'm happy to have been in contact with anyone afterwards if you want more of a look. There's a dashboard that steps through those design thinking stages, and they're listed on the left. I won't go into detail on project management stuff, but the key stages of the design thinking process are all clearly listed on the left here. So if we jump straight in, the first one is field research. So that's where you understanding your problem, understanding your customers, and essentially it's a big whiteboard. So this will load up a bunch of notes. So I've just mocked up a little design sprint for you, assuming my internet's going to work. Here we go. So there's a bunch of cards. These cards can all be moved. The entire design team gets a log on to Sprintbase and see this same view on their browser, so you don't have to share your screen. John's been nice enough to jump in, and he should be able to move some stuff as well, just to show. There's a little map thing down the bottom, so I can scroll around this huge infinite whiteboard, so to speak, zoom in and out so you can see what you're doing. And you can put these little labels up to help group things. So I've got some examples here just on the dot points of the presentation, essentially. Upload photos, you can do little empathy maps. So it's kind of like a tiered structure of whiteboards, where everybody gets to jump in and do things. You map out all of your customer research, all of your observations, all of your feedback. My internet's going a bit slow, sorry. And I'll scroll across here. I think, John, we teed up one. We're going to do this video conferencing tile. So if we were doing research, what are people using out there at the moment for video conferencing? We're trying to improve our online, workshop tool space. We open up this little mini workspace now. And John, are you in? Thumbs up, do something on the screen if you're in. Don't know. Anyway, I'll start. So they've added a really nice little feature here. You can upload photos. You can double click for post-it notes and draw shapes and things like that. But the image search is really cool as well. So if we were doing a little brainstorm session, everybody contribute. What video conferencing tools are we using? All right, I'm just going to, instead of just typing Zoom or using a post-it note, I'm going to go and grab a logo and just click that in there, and away we go. I can do another one. I could do Cisco WebEx logo. And it just goes off and finds it. So there's a few little simple things there. Oh, we've got a couple of WebEx logos coming in. So John's adding things as well. There's little things popping up on screen. He's moved, my hands are off. He'll move something around, hopefully. You gonna move something, John? No, yep, there he goes. There you go, puts his little name up above it, look. So you end up with all these infinite numbers of little collaborative whiteboards that everybody can participate in. There's a whole bunch of different features. You just add them here. There's templates involved, so you can go empathy maps, analogs, journey maps, personas, upload videos, the whole bit. So as you can see, it's a really visual, really visual and interactive and multimedia based whiteboard compared to post-it notes with texters on a wall that you can get to at any point. This then steps you through the design thinking process. So you say, right, well, we've gathered our research. What does it mean? So stage 2 overlays these blue insight statements over the top of your research. You get to add these. Basically, the point of this stage is to say, right, well, I watched customers do something. What does that mean? Oh, customers are scared of contact when they're signing in. Business owners struggle to be a jack of all trades and manage to do everything. Okay, so you start unearthing the insights from your research. That steps you through to step 3, and now we've got a nice clear slate. We can go back at any time, but we've got a clear slate now to focus on this particular stage of the process so people aren't getting confused. I haven't opened the step up. What it does is it takes the top 4. I didn't mention, you get to vote. So it's got inbuilt voting. So you get to vote on the most exciting and opportunistic insights. The top ones get through and clearly sorted on the left. And then we go through an exercise, which if you're familiar with design thinking, you'll know, which is how might we? And that's reframing those insights into an open-ended question that's redefining your challenge, essentially. And it's structured in a way that leads you to coming up with ideas. So, you know, there's some examples here. How could we make ideas visual without needing artistic talent, or something like that? So that would apply to people who don't think they could draw. And so they hold back in their innovation workshops. That steps through to ideas. So again, you vote on the favorite ones. This gives you a nice clean slate. So now for the top, how might we challenges, the focus challenges, it gives you a clean slate for each one. You can run through a whole bunch of activities to come up with ideas. Again, it's really visual, it's really collaborative, and it's really clean. Again, voting rounds kick in, and then that steps you through now into prototyping, where you come up with, again, it makes it clear, this is the idea we're talking about on the left in yellow, and now we're adding prototype cards now, where these might be little planners or graphs to help you think about your idea in more depth. What's going to work? What assumptions are we making? What do we need to test? What might it look like? Now, at any point all the way through, you can invite external collaborators to see just that a particular card. So what do you think about this? And this has got a little get feedback option in the prototype stage, where you actually send that prototype card to a real person. There we go. And hang on, this is the view that they would get. And you would have a discussion with them, step them through a prototype and ask for their feedback, and they get to submit their feedback. And if I actually hit go on that, no, that's because it timed out. Shouldn't have done that an hour ago. But their feedback comes back into this little view button here, where it lists all of their feedback. Last stage in the process, you've got a validated prototype really quickly. So traditionally a Google style design sprint, this is done in 5 days. By doing this remotely in these tools, what I generally do is you split that up, and you'll spread it over a longer period of time. But yes, a whole bunch of implementation plans on this last stage is implementation planning. There's a whole range of templates included to help step you through business model canvas, 30, 60, 90 roadmaps, assumptions, the whole lot. There's a stack in there, and you can add your own. So the idea is that the tool and the process steps you through from understanding your customers right through to a validated idea and a plan on how to implement it. And that's probably me on time. It's a bit whirlwind, sorry everybody.
No, thanks, Rob. No, very good.
Take a breath.
Right on time, by the way. Which gives us a bit of time for questions. So I'll ask people to send in on the chat, either to me or to the group. We'll field some questions if I can. But just while people are doing that, it's a really interesting topic, innovation. I was reading some surveys done on small businesses, some of the top issues that they grapple with that keeps them up at night, and it's constantly in the top 3 of issues facing small businesses: how to innovate and the need to keep innovating. And some of your analysis at the beginning, looking at some of the disruption this COVID's caused to innovation, I can see that's a really big issue. First question from me then is really, what sort of companies, do you see any companies who are doing this well, or alternative companies that are falling behind because of the disruption of COVID on their innovation processes?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. So a lot of the big companies obviously are aware of this stuff. To be honest, CSRO itself is fairly new to this in certain departments. A few departments do it well. I'm running activities in the IT department now, but even so, that's still relatively new. So the big innovative companies that everybody knows about have been doing this for quite a while. It's not new as such, but the adoption and popularity is continuing to increase. A lot of small businesses don't understand, don't know about the processes, or are doing aspects of it anyway without knowing. That's what I mean. It's not, the steps are fairly simple, but having a structured process, I think, really helps to remind you which bit, don't skip one, you might miss something. So that's interesting to see. I don't think many small businesses are actively working in this sort of framework at the moment. I think it's the larger companies with the resources to build the teams. I'm looking at ways to facilitate small business, to be able to make that more accessible. And one of the things I'm looking at doing at the moment is trying to build a framework in place with other facilitators that could gather small business owners, even down to sole trader level if need be, from like businesses, maybe in different regional areas. So they're not directly competing with each other, for instance, but they're experiencing similar problems, and they can come together and form a design team and run through and then share the results. So there's things like that I'm looking to do to try and assist small business be able to use these tools.
Yeah, a lot of compliments from the audience, Rob. I think people started just on the tool and they started to see how the tool works. And I think myself included, I do a lot of facilitation and collaborative type work, and you can just sort of see in this, everyone, this remote based working, some of those tools and how intuitive they feel and capturing some of that. So you got a lot of good comments from people in there. Another question from the audience is about metrics. How I assume that's metrics of the tool itself, but also what sort of metrics do you look at for innovation, and whether these tools and this process of innovation is working well or not?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, and that's I was running at such a pace I didn't see the comments about metrics. Part of the tool actually goes through and it's measuring the participation of the design team members as well. So you get some beautiful little graphs around who's been contributing in different ways, which is really nice from a project leader's perspective, that they can monitor the engagement of their team and the contribution of their team. As far as metrics around the innovation itself, that's how long's a piece of string to a point, or it depends on exactly what it is that you're measuring. One key point though is, in my experience, is really interesting. You can't put there's no point in putting much of a metric in at the very start, because every time you run through one of these processes, it's almost guaranteed to go in a direction you weren't expecting. It will have unearthed something about your customers that you didn't realize, and that was the most interesting thing, and that's the path you've gone down, and you've ended up not where you thought you were going to be. So it's an interesting one to try and measure. Really, I think the measurement comes in at prototype and implementation stage. So that's when you can really start saying, right, well, we've got an idea now, we're putting it in front of some people. Let's put it in front of X number of people, 10 of these, 10 of those, 10 of those, 10 of those, build up your data set, get the feedback, work through iterations. And then when you go and implement it, then you can do some staged implementation and measure that way against existing benchmarks that you had in place in that space before, maybe. Yeah. So what was our performance before? What is it now, etc.
Yeah. Very good. Another interesting question come up from Fabian here, was saying, as a sole trader, and by the way, many of the audience within the Geelong Small Business Festival, there's a good number of small sole traders. How can they best do this? They're conscious of competitors and not sharing ideas with people who might compete against them. But have you got any tips for them on how to be able to work with this sort of a tool in innovation?
Look, I've run myself through the process on my own. John and I work together on CIOTI, and we regularly jump in and run sessions with just the two of us. So the process is not related to size particularly or big business only. And the tool works regardless as a method to capture the information yourself and step yourself through. I didn't even get to show you the inbuilt guidance, but that workspace tab, there's a guidance tab next to it for every single stage, and straight out of the box with the tool is a whole host of how-to documentations for that one stage, how to interview somebody and embrace active listening techniques, or how to complete a business model canvas tool, or whatever it might be. So it's possible to do on your own, do some reading, do some learning. I'd biased maybe, but I would highly recommend initially asking for some help from somebody that does this. There is a bit of an art form and a mindset shift that some external assistance really does help with. Otherwise you'll have a go and go, oh, it kind of doesn't work. But once you're up and running, you don't need a big team or a load of money in order to do this. It could be for small things. And
related to that about team, the question about the sole trader again is, I mean, this would work equally well, not just people with a team within your business, but also a team of perhaps suppliers or third parties or customers, right? Combined.
100%. 100%. I've got a sprint potentially coming up, hopefully kicking off next month with a group of essentially wholesale partners. So yes, you get little industry groups, associations. It's brilliant for where they are sharing some information. I had a conversation not long ago with a business coach who was part of a business coach association where there's a group of 90 of them or whatever that meet regularly and set themselves some common standards and approaches. And so those guys, that's a perfect scenario where they could definitely be looking to collaboratively do something different and share all of that themselves. But yeah, get a couple of customers involved. Bree's comment around diversity and inclusion, that applies to creative thinking as well. Regardless of the gender side, all of the benefits of that apply. If you're in a group, there's a book, I can't remember the guy's name, some YouTube clips around mess, working with mess or something. If you're in a group of people that aren't like you and have different experiences and different backgrounds and different perspectives, then you're going to get a better result at the end.
Very good. We're getting close to time. If there's any final question we could take, but otherwise, Rob, thanks very much for your insights and analysis. I enjoyed that very much.
Thank you. Bit whistle stop, and if anyone's interested in a slower, more thorough demo, I'm more than happy to give one.
Okay. Thanks for the offer. How do they get in contact with you, Rob?
Rob at ravenco.com.au. I'm on Facebook, website, email. It's there. LinkedIn. Look me up. I should be available. Worst case, contact John.